Here we are.
Here we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session of the Think Tank. And it's a real honor to have two of my fellow XXV family here. We are a real family at XXV, and they have brought so much value. But tonight we have the wonderful Mary Fisk-Taylor with the amazing Tim Walden. So I'm going to hand straight over to Mary and Tim.
Yay. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you so much. And oh my gosh, thank you, Tim, for taking the time to chit chat. It's just after lunchtime for us here on the East Coast. So Tim's right up from me in Kentucky. I'm here in Virginia in the States, and we're just so happy to be here. And I'm so excited you had time to do this today. Tim, I know you've been busy, even with all of this. I know you've been super busy, you and Bev. What's been going on there?
Oh, we're working on a million projects. I think I told Ronan, I think if there was only two people left on earth, Bev and myself, I'd work 70 hours a week.
What?
It's just in my nature, but I think it's a great time to do some things that we've been needing to do. It's a great time to position ourselves differently, maybe if we not totally pleased, or to enhance where we're positioned. And so we're working hard on that. And
doing all that.
Now we're just rambling on all that, but yeah, we're staying busy in short fashion, very busy.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'm a big fan, as you know. I'm a big Tim Walden fan. I would have posted this, but I didn't know if I could say it or not. But whenever I get a chance to sit down and talk to Tim, for me, it's like going to like church. It's like a, and it's not that you're preachy. It's just like everything, you just resonate so well. And I know that everything you share and say is so incredibly authentic and from the heart and from a place of, I'm getting like emotional, just this place of wanting to give and wanting to see this industry be the best it can be. And I can't thank you enough for being that person in my life, Tim. And I'm thrilled to sit here and talk to you today. So you are second generation, right? You grew up in this industry.
I did. And first, thank you for those kind words. That means
You're
a lot. And the thing I love about this industry, we're not a normal industry. People in this industry are passion driven. The successful people are, they love people. And so that means a lot. And I come by it honestly. My father, was a professional photographer. He was paralyzed in a wheelchair from his armpits down for the last 40 years of his life. And he did 1,000 weddings from the wheelchair. And I tell everybody, I didn't get into photography because I loved photography, not initially. I got into photography because he was so passionate. And his passion, I kept thinking, how can you love something that much? And it must be something to it. I'm going to give it a try.
Aww.
And ended up getting bit by that same bug. But, every time I start wanting an excuse, like, oh, things are bad, I think about, paralyzed from his armpits down. I mean, he could not lean forward. 1,000 weddings from the wheelchair, earned his master's degree. And so usually the bad thing about that, it just gets rid of all of my excuses and I have to roll up my sleeve and get rolling. But
wow,
but the passion comes, he passed that down, and I still love what I do, or I wouldn't do it.
You and Bev both, and you guys have been, ever since you've been in this business together your whole marriage, right? Am I wrong on the whole time you've been married?
Yeah,
y'all worked together.
Beverly worked when we first got married, and we just had to have some additional source of income.
Yeah.
We worked at the bank, but our goal was always to work together. But Beverly is by nature an artist. She was trained as an artist. So she had a natural love for photography, even when she had no knowledge of how it worked, but she had the knowledge of composition, lighting, emotion, the things that go into great art. So it was a natural fit for her. And now she does our painting work, our design, and so she's doing some amazing things.
Yeah, she's quite the marketer. I know that all of us, who have a great business partner, it's always that dance, to let people do what they do. But, we all have that person in our corner lifting us up and helping us do all these great things. I want to talk to you about marketing, obviously, because you and Bev are amazing. But, so many people, Tim, work in this business with their spouse. And right now, in this situation we're all in, it's even maybe a little more stressful. You know what I mean? To be married to your business, married to your business partner, trying to negotiate all of that. How do you and Bev, how do you guys handle that? Like, how do you, do you guys, are you separating things, or, you know what I mean? Because I know nothing's perfect. As perfect as I think you and Bev are, I know that you're not, because none of us are. How have you negotiated that during this time, especially? You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's intentional. I think it's very intentional. Beverly and I, we just love each other. But it doesn't mean you can always work together.
Right.
But I think for us, it goes to a respect for what each brings to the table, a willingness to say, okay, that's an area that I'm going to just trust you, or it's not worth, my opinion when I really don't know the answer to something. I'm just going to default to you. And it's just that mutual respect. But I think more than anything, it's intentional. It's saying, okay, this is an area you feel passionate about, you feel strongly about. It's just a thing. It's just a decision. Marriage is more important to us. So here we're going to go that way. And most time it'll work out if one of us is passionate about it. And it's more important that we have, the time together that we enjoy. So
sure.
But for people in that boat, I'd say you had to make a decision. You have to be intentional. You got to push through. It's not like, oh, well, it's just never a problem. It's just you choose for it not to be a problem.
Yeah. So trust and intentional.
Yeah.
I love that. And, I had a conversation similar to this just yesterday, just talking about if you want to be versus being a boss or being a leader and whatever that is. And would you agree that there's certain areas of your studio that you lead and certain areas that Bev does? And maybe you have an employee over here and that you trust them. It doesn't have to be necessarily your spouse.
Absolutely. And I think trusting somebody doesn't mean you're expecting they'll never be a problem or something wrong. It's just trusting they have the same goal. I look at, an employee and I look at Beverly and I think we have the exact same goal. Yeah. It's not like we're disagreeing on something and it's like, oh, that person or she or I want to destroy us. We have the same goal. We have the same purpose. So let's play it out and let's go as a team. And, I think when you serve in boards or different things, you said in those a lot of times, you might disagree on something, but when you walk out, you're a family.
That's right.
And I think the same is true in marriage. You can talk it out, but then, you come out and you stick with one decision. And I think there's areas where Beverly and I, through the years, I know this is an area I just need to let go because she has the skill set. And I think hope, it seems the reverse is true too. So that's you. I would maybe think a little different, but I trust you to do the right thing. And if we're wrong, then we fix it. Yes, you're wrong. It's not like the end of the world.
Yeah. So I love that. And I this is just something that we don't talk about enough because, even on a daily basis when things are quote unquote normal, a lot of us work in this situation with a really close friend or, partner and we need to give ourselves a little credit. And I think, also giving yourself that grace to we're not always going to agree but it's not the end of the world. It doesn't define us, right? It doesn't define who we are and what our relationship is. Well, speaking of relationships, as you guys probably already know, Tim definitely inspired a relationship style portraiture many years ago. I'll never forget the first time I saw it and I was sold and I have sold more Tim Walden-esque, took his idea and ran with it, portraits, and made so much money off of it. So God bless you, Tim. You're a great man in my book alone. If you never did anything else, you were amazing then. But, I know that we know that style and it's stunning, but I think more than that, when I think of you and Bev and your work and your studio, relationship is just a theme all the way through with your colors, study, black and whites, everything. Talk about how you work with that.
Well, actually, I think the thing that I was never driven to photography by the technical aspects. I was driven by making a difference in somebody's life. My goal was, can my art, can it change somebody's life? Can it fulfill their life in a different way? Can it provide something in the future they wouldn't have without it? Can I tell a story with it? Just the ability to be able to expose something well and to light it well. That to me is, I tell everybody that technical excellence is never what you sell. I think at the highest level, if you want to sell art at the highest level, you're not bragging that hey, I've got a perfect 3:1 lighting ratio and I nailed the exposure.
Right.
I mean, that should be a given. Mm-hmm. What technical excellence does is it supports the message of the art. And the message of the art is what people will be driven to purchase. And if you're not, in a simple terms, marketing, sales, whatever it might be, sell the result of your art, market the result of your art. Allow the technical excellence to keep it from being a facade, because if you do, if you don't pay attention to the technical side, you don't do it excellently. There'll be a time it crumbles. There'll be a time where it's noticed. You may get away with it right off the bat, but it's not a strong foundation. But technical excellence is never what you market, never what you sell. I believe that when people invest in a portrait, a Walden portrait, they have a right to expect it to be technically excellent, the right papers, the right lighting, the right posing. But what they're selling, what I'm selling and what I'm marketing, is the message and the story behind it, and connecting them to, connecting my art to their story and their life. If I can do that, and that's what we continue to work to do, then I separate and segregate myself from the masses who are recording faces, doing beautiful photography, but it's emotionally impotent. It's just like, it's nice. I'm glad to have it, but it doesn't have the depth. And so, we work really hard at talking to people about the things that are more important, adding purpose to our product, adding purpose to our photography, adding purpose to the experience, going beyond, selling the mechanics of photography. And then when we do that, you build loyalty at the highest possible level. You create buzz. Actually, right. I think, to be honest with you, I think loyalty today, for a lot of parts, is kind of dead. It's like I tell everybody, I know loyalty is dead because I went to the funeral. I was the pallbearer there. So, but what's not dead is buzz. Buzz is not dead, and that's a level above. That's where you're creating an energy, a dynamic, an experience that just takes people to a level that they don't expect, and takes some places they don't expect, but they want to go. They don't even know they want to go there. Right. Because when they come in, Mary, tell me about your children. Tell me about your husband. Tell me about your daughter, your son. If this portrait is a chapter in their life, what would the bold print be? Don't pick a background. I don't want you going here picking a, my goodness, who wants to go to a surgeon and say, which scalpel should I use?
Right.
So yeah, we want to get to those things. And right now we're working, and I say this, and we've done this for decades, and yet I find myself getting sloppy at it at times, and I have to re-energize myself and say, get back to the core principles that got you here. And it wasn't the technical excellence, it was the stories and the way we help people celebrate the people they love.
If this was a chapter in your life, what would the bold print be? I feel like Oprah right now. When I feel my mind just exploded. Yeah. Oh, what would the bold print be? Yeah. I mean, when you ask somebody that, like, if you ask me that question about my children, my family, I don't know if I could stop crying long enough to even answer that. That just hit me as a human being, as a mom, as a wife, as a daughter. That just hit me so hard. Right. So it's that type of language and that type of philosophy that using in our businesses. Boy, you want to talk about set you apart. You're not even in the same galaxy, yeah, right?
I call it two-before marketing. You think you're going, it just like hits you upside the head like a two-before, and it's like, well, where did that come from? But you can buy into it, and I tell other image makers, I say, I can't tell you exactly how learning somebody's story will make you a different photographer, but I'll guarantee you it will. I'll guarantee you that in that session, you'll begin to see things play out, subtle things, nuances, body language, the reaction between a couple of people. So, and you'll say, that's what Mary said about her son or her daughter. Yeah. Okay, I see that. And then when you go in the sales room, Mary, you don't do like the dumbest thing in the world and say, I like this one. What do you think about your expression? What you do is you say, you remember the story you told.
Oh, I've got chill bumps all over my whole body. Yes.
I see that story in this image, don't you? And people no longer, they don't say, oh, I don't like my smile. All of a sudden they're saying, yes, I see that in this image.
Oh.
And yeah, it's a powerful way to take our work to the next level.
And I actually know this and I actually do this, but to hear it, sometimes we do these things, and I think this is maybe what you were saying. You say, sometimes I get sloppy but but we start feeling like we're just going through the motions a little bit. And when I hear you say it back to me, it makes me feel so proud of what we do, right? And what we give and create for people.
I've seen your all's work. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it doesn't change the reality of the truth of it.
No.
The dynamics of how we message that change, social media, videos, all these things that my dad never had. But the core principle of the way we market, the core principle of how we treat people, that doesn't change. It's just what it was the vehicle that takes us there. That might change. Or it might be,
Yes,
yeah.
of course. Tim, I know you have you guys have a successful studio, but I also know that you work with a lot of studios and a lot of photographers and do a lot of coaching and mentoring across the, the country, probably the world. But, I know you hear a lot. So you hear maybe, I'm not you. I can't do that. My work's not there. I need to do this. And so for those listening that need a little Tim Walden wisdom here, how do you talk to people and take care of them and get them to that place where they can look you in the eye and say, you remember that story you told me? And I see it. I see that connection between you and your son. I see this. How do you give people that? Because I know you do. I know that your mentoring and coaching I know how successful people are once they study with you. How would you talk to somebody like that and help them?
Well, I think, for a lot of people, it's just a matter of encouragement in some ways, because they need somebody to say, you can do this. I think they need permission, to say, I want you to be an excellent photographer, and I'll help you with those things. But if you're not connecting with people, then you're not going to draw the imagery, you're not going to draw the emotion, and you're not going to connect at the highest possible level. And so, we go through ways, depending on their personality, to accomplish that. A lot of times what I see with people is not that they wouldn't agree with that, is they need more confidence in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it is. They don't see it play out. It's like when you teach something, because you and I both do a lot of teaching, and I'll say something to a group and they'll say, okay, I understand it. But then when they go to execute it, they don't execute it in similar fashion. So you're thinking, okay, wait a minute, what's that disconnect? And a lot of times it's just confidence. And so most of what I'm doing is building up confidence, giving them permission again to say, let's talk to people about some of the things that are important to them. And then ways to word it. I think, sometimes if it's not authentic, like people will say, okay, tell me what to say. And then they'll try to say it and it's not authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to come to people with your own DNA, your own dynamics, but it has to be the kind of connection that is going beyond those barriers. There's an old saying, the heart buys, the mind justifies. And
right.
And I think in what we do, we have to figure out how to give people justifications to maybe our product, the product value, things like that, without that being our conversation when we get together. We have to find ways to put that beside us and to then begin to say, tell me about your children. What are your ambitions? What are your goals for your kids? I mean, what are their skill sets? What do you see in them? Maybe you ask it a little bit different than I do, but I want to get you bold enough to ask it. And I remember training a young lady, I miss her so much. Laura Daniels was with us for many, many years, an amazing photographer. And I think her greatest skill wasn't her photography, she was teachable. She was like a sponge. She wanted to learn, wanted to learn. And she said, let's go learn photography. And I said, you know what? I don't want you in the camera room until I know that you can connect with people. And I think that connection comes through engaging their mind.
Yeah.
How do you engage their mind? And I stole that from Greg Boussac. I remember teaching in Italy, and he said the thing with kids is engaging their mind. And I thought, you know what? That's the thing with everybody. How do you engage someone in the eye? You talk to them about the things that are meaningful. You become vulnerable. And I think that's another way we get to the level you're talking about with people. I said, you've got to become vulnerable. If you've got these walls up and you're like, okay, I've got to be something I'm not, because if I'm going to ask the kind of money that I want for my art and that it's worth, I've got to be this thing that's artificial. You don't. There has to be impression in your studio. There has to be impression in a lot of the things. But I think in your connection to people, you have to be vulnerable for them to become vulnerable. And I really, to me, I care about people I photograph. I get talking to them. Sometimes I start crying. They start, you never know. It just depends. But I want to go a place that the average photographer would never go.
Yeah.
And you know where that is. People say, well, how do people take it? They take it right every single time, because inside of you where that place is,
Mhm.
that you can start to talk about the things that, and it'll be inherent to you. It'll be natural to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and y'all don't be fooled. I know what he's saying, and he's exactly, and I know you mean this about the authenticity of, the connection, but he is very, very technical as well. That just is like breathing to you at that point.
Right.
The exposure, the opposing, that's just a given. And I know how much you value that. And I know your work is technically excellent as well. We've got something so first of all, somebody said, even on Zoom, Tim has great lighting. He was afraid he was a little too blue, but compared to my lighting in this room today, anybody has great lighting. But I was teasing him about being a Kentucky basketball fan. So it was perfect that he had a little blue lighting, but somebody complimented your lighting.
Yes,
Somebody said, Patty said, I have a beautiful studio and run a boutique business that specializes in photographing children from toddlers to teens. So my question is, lawn signs are all the rage right now for high school seniors. Should I offer this? I like the idea of helping the kids feel better, but the product feels like a commodity and I don't know how to price it. So this is that question. And okay. And I almost am going to guess what Tim said, because I had this conversation, Tim won't remember this, like 15 years ago. And I remember talking to Tim and I was like, I see all this and I like all this. And he said, look me dead in the eye, and here comes another Timism. Some of the best ideas I've ever seen, I had to leave on the table. And to this day, when I teach and share, I bring that up, because that was one of probably the best lessons that was given to me very early on in my career. So how would you reply to Patty about these lawn signs? We were talking about a lot of people are doing the lawn yard graduation, congratulations graduate, or whatever signs. What would you do if somebody asked you to do it?
Refers to children and families and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's mostly for high school seniors, congratulations, because they're not getting to do their graduations.
Right. Well, that's a tough call. And I think what you're referring to is, and I always try to measure what I do this way, is one of my favorite things to just share at time, is that wisdom today is as much in knowing what not to do as what to do.
Yes.
Because I think there was a time in my father's day where, it's like, oh, look what we can do. Let's go do that. Let's go do that. Today, there's too many things we can do. And I think what happens, we get distracted by things that, like, that seems great, or everybody's doing that. That seems great. I have a tendency to pull back from things like that and say, does this line up with my brand?
Right.
Is this the best way to invest my time and my money? I can't answer the question for that particular person, because I can see a circumstance maybe in a small community or maybe, that person that would fit their brand DNA. It doesn't work quite with mine. I'm more of a one-on-one kind of a personal connection with people, and finding ways to stay in touch with them at a high emotional level. So that probably wouldn't be it. But one of the things that Bev and I do, and this is a vague answer because I can't answer that for that person.
Right.
I can only answer it for myself. But Beverly and I, when we're talking about decisions we make, we sit down and we draw a little circle with it, and we put an A in it. We draw a little circle, we put a B in it. And then we draw an outer circle, we put a C in it. So when we're coming up with ideas, A means it lines up perfectly with the Walden DNA. It fits the Walden brand. So as we're throwing out ideas, we write them in there. B means it's a gray area, I'm not sure. C means that's not Walden-esque, even if it's a good idea for others. And then we sit back and we begin to map out and pick our battles and say, those things in A, those are the things we're going to invest our time on, because there's so many things out there we could be doing. So for me, I think that's a really personal decision, but it's not something that I want to do personally for our art form, but it's not because it's a bad idea for that person.
Right. It's just not a good idea for you. It's not a good fit for the brand.
It's not a right fit for me. I think one of the hardest things is understanding your brand and making decisions. And I say, if you're uneasy about it, and there's other ways you can invest your time that will solidify and build your brand, then I would put my time there. But
I agree. I 100% agree with that. And I know that at our studio, our Hayes and Fisk studio, same thing. We had a few, and I'm like, I can help you try to find a resource to print this. I'll even lay it out for you if you don't know, you know what I mean? If it's a great client and they want that, but it's not something I'm going to put my studio name on it. And not because they're bad. It's just not what I do. You know what I mean? So you have to make that I get that.
And that sounds like a cop out. I don't mean for it to, but I really do think you reach that area where you have to, it's not a bad idea. It's just, is it the right idea for you?
I agree. And that's a question we should ask about anything we bring into our studio, because it's so fun to go and hear, oh my gosh, so many amazing speakers, and you go to, imaging, or you go to the trade shows, and we see all this cool stuff, but it just isn't always for you. And that doesn't mean it's not awesome. It just means it's not awesome for your business.
That's right. And I have a tendency, now this is my personality, Mary, but I have a tendency to look where the masses are going and run the other way. Because I see a lot of people going one direction. It doesn't mean that it's always a bad idea, because there's times you need, like right now, we have to be careful what we're saying in our marketing, things like that. And I agree with that. But I'm speaking in general terms. It's like, oh, the masses are doing this. I'm going to go do what the masses can't do. I'm going where they can't go. What are those things? And then I began to head that direction, because I think the way you're successful in today's market is to create gaps between you and the masses. In other words, what are the gaps that you can create between you and the masses? And a lot of people say, well, I can do what everybody else is doing, but my stuff's better.
Right.
But does the public really see that?
No.
What we're doing doesn't look like what the others are doing. So now, you have to be less concerned in today's market about people liking what you do. And you have to be more concerned that they know what you do. Because it's in knowing what you do that you begin to connect with the right people. See, when we try to please everybody, we become so diluted in our art. And if you're truly trying to sell art that's investment worthy at its highest possible value, you've got to have some differences. You've got to have certain things in that art that demands the money, that demands the position, and that doesn't look like what the masses are. And I can promise you, there's people right here in Lexington that would look at what we do and go, I wouldn't pay that for that. Why, it's not even in color. Why would you do that?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Rookie agrees with you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm okay with that, because there's people that love it, and they'll come and they'll pay for it because they see that difference. So you got to find that sweet spot that makes you unique.
I love that. And you're so right. But and people they will pay for a brand. And that's kind of what you're saying, essentially. I mean, they're buying a Walden portrait to hang on their wall.
And the technical stuff we talked about earlier is what keeps it from being a facade. That's important, because otherwise it's a facade.
Yeah.
That's not what you're selling.
Yeah. You've really done a great job bridging that gap. I talked about this this week, actually, with somebody. There's a book, Know What You're For. I don't know if you've read that, by Jeff Henderson. He's a pastor out of Atlanta, so it's got an evangelical kind of spin to it, but it spoke to me. And he's a dynamic guy. He's just really cool. But he talks about bridging that gap between what you are for and what you're known for. And a lot of times they don't meet, right?
No, right. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in sitting down and coming to those understandings with your brand, and finding that sweet spot and then building on it.
I could not agree more. So somebody said, oh my gosh, can I use your tagline? Seriously, that's amazing. We have somebody in tears. I think somebody said another amazing Timism. That might be Jamie Hayes. Tim Walden for King. That's another nice comment we got. Okay, what am I missing here? So yeah, just moved to a new area from the middle of Canada to Anchorage, Alaska. Okay. Would love to break into the senior market. In Canada, it's not as big of a thing as it is here. So Tim, what would you say when you get somebody in and they are new market? If you were opening up a new studio right now today in a whole new area, what's the first thing you would do with your wisdom and your experience? What would be the first thing you would do?
Well, I would define my art form, in a way that would connect with the people, and that I was passionate about. So, and had a strong emotional tag to it. I still think, that's important, is that we're about storytelling, we're about emotion, we're about celebrating people. And I think that carries all the way through your product, and it carries all the way, not just your photography, but the experience that they have with you. Those are going to create, that's part of that buzz creation. When the experience is over the top, it's amazing. And then I think I would look for, again, as I said a while ago, running where the masses can't go. What can they not do? Now, there's some truth to the fact that certain places too, you may have smaller markets.
Yes.
And like, you can't say, I'm going to only do maternity portraits and newborn babies, and I live in a town with 5,000 people. Right. There's balance to this. But when I teach, I always say we need to have a trophy brand. What's your trophy brand? Like at Walden's, we do black and white relationship portraits. That's what got us here. That's what carried us here. And I tell everybody it was a God idea because I'm not that smart.
Yes.
And because we were, this was 20 years ago, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. And I'd taken over for my dad. He was drawing disability. His photography was therapy. And we were going downhill fast. We were busy as we could be and making no money at all. So we created a trophy brand. And we did not sacrifice that trophy brand. I didn't do it to succeed. I did it because I thought, well, if I'm going to go out of business, I want to go out doing something I love. So it was emotionally based fine art, black and white. Now, I don't compromise that. I think it's important that we build clarity. When I talk about building a style, like to whoever this person is talking about, I would say, clarity is a key to marketing. It's not the pretty part, but people take comfort in knowing what they're buying. You have to have clarity. And usually most people have to watch the screen. They're out here in what they do, and they should be down in here in what they do. Because that clarity will connect you with the right client. So I think one of the keys to success is clarity of what you do. And it's where it goes back to the wisdom is in knowing what not to do. So I think we have to put some things aside when we go into a town and build our DNA. Then you can expand from there. Like we expanded into our color studies and our beau visage paintings
Yep.
Azaz, because they line up with the Walden brand. They're Walden-esque, but even in a town of 300,000, we felt like we needed some embellishment, but everything had to kind of be in its own lane.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something about marketing and branding I feel strongly about. There's so many different people that have like a brand means this and a brand means that, and it's all very valid. But ultimately, what I like to say to people is that people who are successful in any brand, they form expectations and then fulfill them. So being successful in branding means you're forming the expectations of the people that come. Here, I'm going to give you some rocket science things here. People will come to you with an expectation, whether you like it or not. They're coming to you with one. The question becomes who formed it. If it was formed by their misunderstanding about photography or what it should be or whatever, there's a good chance that you'll do an amazing job and disappoint that client. And usually if I'm speaking to people, I'll say, how many people will be honest enough to raise your hand and say, I've done a portrait that I was so proud of, and the client was disappointed. And the ones that don't raise their hands are usually lying.
You're right about that. I'll raise my hand.
And then I'll say, what's the first question you've asked yourself? What did I do wrong?
Right.
You might not have done anything wrong. It's just simply that they had one expectation, you didn't form it, and so you didn't fulfill it. So this goes into all the way back to that question. If you're going to this new town, begin to form people's expectations with consistency, with excellence, and with art that has a purpose. It has a longevity to it. It serves a purpose. And then how can I message that purpose? See, if someone picks up a Walden portrait today, a lot of times they'll say, wow, that was a big investment. I'll say, it was. That is a lot of money. And I can promise you the day you pick it up, it's worth what you paid for it. But I'll also promise you something else. It's worth its least value the day you come and get it. It holds its least value. It is going to grow in value. And I can prove it through stories. I can prove it through people in our community that things have changed in their life. Or you hear the old saying, a house fire, and they got the book. I can promise you that whatever you've paid for my portrait today, it's worth it. But I'll also promise you that's the least it'll ever be worth. And so we have to begin to message that type of thing, get clarity to who we are. Don't worry about, oh, well, some people like this background, some people like that background. And then you dilute yourself. You're not forming an expectation. You're forming this kind of diluted version of being everything. So they come, they saw something, you don't even know what they saw. You go and do this, and they're like, that's not, I mean, it's okay, but I'm not all that happy with it. And then you go back and say, well, I must not be a good photographer. That's not true. You just got to form and fulfill those expectations. I think if you're starting fresh, you got the perfect opportunity to do the right things.
Yes. You said something earlier, and I want to key in on it. And I've been to Tim and Bev's studio. I've been lucky enough to study with them and spend time with them. But even if you look behind Tim right now, they have their you see that even though they're in the same space, everything's in the same space, those different brands live. And you can see he's got the black and whites on one wall, and then you go around, I can see the both Azaz or the color studies. It's separate but equal in the way you guys honor it and display it, even in not a huge studio. Tim doesn't work in this huge mansion. It's a nice studio, beautiful studio, but you keep it super separate. Does that also help you with the longevity of, getting your clients to come back? And then a couple of people have asked, how do you get the new people in the door? How do you get your new clients in the door?
I love that question.
I know.
Yeah. I think one of the things, I'm starting to realize I answer questions like my dad. I kind of go around the block.
But it's a nice journey. It's a beautiful walk. It's a beautiful walk.
I think if you're going to be a great artist, all great artists are known for one thing: vision. They have vision. You start with the end in mind. So when we're designing with people, I'm going to tell them, listen, if we're going to do a black and white relationship portrait, I don't go in, I might step on some toes here. Forgive me. I'm only sharing this from the perspective of just making people think a little differently. I want there to be, I'm thinking about the end portrait. I'm not thinking about a variety. For me, a lot of times variety is an enemy of creativity, especially when it comes to one in color, one in black and white, one in sepia. So we start with the end in mind. Then we define what is the purpose of that art. So our black and white relationship portraits, we tell our clients they are a glimpse into the heart. They're not into the heart. They're the storytelling part of what we do. I want to learn your story, and I want to celebrate that in black and white. I do it in black and white because it's got longevity. It's got drama. I can add more drama to it. And then the clothing is going to bow its knee to the story. So I don't want you coming in like in some tight-fitting dress and the guys in bow ties and all that, because I want movement. I want nuances. I want body language. So I start with the end in mind. Now, there's times where maybe for a color study, we, instead of a glimpse into the heart, we tell people a color study is like a glimpse in the mirror. In other words, if you're getting all decked out to go out on the town, somebody you love, before you walk out of the house, what's the last thing you do? You stop and take a glimpse in the mirror. When that gets the approval, like, yeah, that's the way I want to look. That's what a color study is.
Right.
It's an entirely different purpose. So we build different art forms for different times in people's lives. They serve different purposes. Bobasage, we tell them, is a glimpse in the soul, because that's got more interpretation to it. It's got the artist's interpretation. So Beverly's going to play a role in bringing that to a depth of impact that's not just what was captured. She's going to take it someplace a little bit further. So a glimpse in the heart, a glimpse in the mirror, and a glimpse in the soul. Each of those have a different place and a different time. So we're going to direct people differently. Then we created a document that Beverly's right now rebuilding called Your Life in Portraits. So what we've done is we've taken somebody's entire life, and at certain ages, what would you do at Walden's? What type of portrait should you be doing? And so we use this documentation to say, at this particular age with a young baby, let's do a black and white relationship portrait. We need that forgiveness. We need movement. But the color study ought to start when the child's a little bit older. That's when we're going to do a family portrait. We're going to do your first painting at 5 years old. So we always seed market. We call it seed marketing. So when someone comes in for a portrait, we're already planting seed for their next session. And the best way to market to an existing client is with their permission. So I always ask, I'll say, you know what, your children's, these key times in their life are critical. Would it be okay if I kept up with you and made you aware of those specific times? And if I'm pestering you, tell me, I'll just go away. Nobody ever says, oh no, don't do that. And nobody tunes us out because I've got their permission. I'm asking permission.
Right.
Your child is this age. I want to do the next portrait on this particular time. Is it okay if I follow up with you? I'll tell them, I'll say, if you miss it, I want it to be your fault.
I love that. But you are so right. This is what and this is why, in my opinion, people look at you as a professional, a guide, right? You're guiding them through all this. You're telling them, because really and truly, I think we hear a lot from some of our fellow creatives, oh, well, they won't do this or that. And I'm like, you know what's really funny? If you just take over control and authority in this because you know what you're doing.
Right.
People want to just be told what to do because we're all exhausted.
Amen. And when somebody comes in and I say, hey, what did you have in mind? They'll say, I don't know. I'll say, you could not have given me a better answer.
Yeah.
Here's what we need to do with the age of your children, the size of your family, whatever the dynamic is. I have an art form that I feel best reflects that age. And people like confident people. Nobody likes an arrogant person. And sometimes we get mixed up. We think confidence is arrogance. And this goes back to the training that we were talking about before. I'll say, I don't want you to be arrogant, but I want you confident. And, it's like if I'm going to go in a restaurant and spend $100, $150 for a meal, a nice meal, and a server walks up and I'll say, what should I order? I don't want him to say, oh, I don't know. It's all good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm paying for a different level of experience. I want him to look at me and say, if you don't order the bone-in ribeye, you are going to regret it. Now, what if I don't eat red meat? Which I do.
Don't we all?
Let's say I don't, Okay, so I say, oh, that sounds good, but I'm not really much of red meat. And you go, okay, I'm going to forgive you this time, but only because the mahi.
Yeah.
That's the kind of leadership you need.
You're right.
In this, and this is where I was talking about training Laura. I'm like, when an alpha dog, she was 25 at the time or 27, when an alpha dog walks in that room and I want to know, are you going to lead because this is your area of expertise, or are you going to fold?
Yeah.
And if you're going to fold, then I don't want you in my camera, and let's not bother with the lighting. And because ultimately, I think it's those levels of connection, of caring, of vulnerability, of steering the ship that is going to make you an amazing storyteller through your photography. And so I think this goes back to your earlier question. That when I'm training people, it's like, you got to be vulnerable, you've got to be intentional, but I want you confident. People like confident people. Don't be arrogant, but don't be not confident, whatever.
Yeah.
Because we get those two mixed up. We think,
we do.
Oh, I do that because I want to be a service. I want to give them good service. And we think good service is, what do you want? That's not good service.
No, that's not.
You're asking someone to be an expert at something they're not an expert in. And they're probably not going to tell you. They're just going to simply make the wrong decision.
100%. I love that. And I think what you're saying is I always say, your ego is not your amigo. So, or ego is the enemy. If you love that, I love that Ryan Holiday book, but ego this is not ego. This is the fact that I, for 25 years, have served this industry. I am constantly pushing and learning. That's why we're all here today. Right. And I'm not going to sit there. Nothing is going to kill a sale or kill a session for me bigger than for me to look at him and go, so what do you want?
Yeah, right.
Well, bye. I never would use that language in my studio ever.
And when someone does that, whether it's spoken or unspoken, and usually it would be unspoken, I think there's a loss of that trust that you're trying to build is lost.
I agree.
And I have trouble writing a check for something at that level. Again, assuming that we're looking to have a boutique business selling wall portraits or prints, things like that. I have trouble if that person is letting me steer the ship. Now, I want your opinion, and I'll steer accordingly. Just like with the server, you say, I don't eat red meat. All right, I'm going to forgive you this time because we have this opportunity. But not, well, okay, whatever you think.
It's all good. Or I don't really eat here. That is a great example. Let me get to some of these questions over here. Hold on a second, Tim. Somebody asked a question, and I'm going to try, guys. I know there's so many, and honestly, I can't keep up. Somebody said, could you explain a little bit how your mentorships work? Because they've been thinking about it. Maybe this is the year. So give us a little information on that, because I know how many people you've helped. And I'm putting Tim on the spot here, and I know he's probably going to be mad at me, but share a little bit about what you do, because it is important, and I know you do such a great job.
Well, most of our mentorships, and the reason I love mentorships because I love people and I love this industry, and I just think sometimes we don't realize what our potential is. But we do a year-long mentorship that you can, I think, timwalden.com. It's there, and it's a year-long. It focuses on black and white portraiture, fine art, and then the marketing, the selling, the mindset, the storytelling through your art. We meet once a month, and then at the end of the year, we come together for a retreat. And so it's a hybrid between online, what we call touch points, each month, and each one has a dissected curriculum. So we start out with what makes a great black and white. What is it you're looking for? We go into lighting and posing, then we go into style, and sales and marketing, and we just finished some post capture work. And so by the end of the year, we come together, we hopefully learn that, and then we execute it as a team. That to me is just an amazing journey. We start next September is the next one. We're in one right now, so we're taking signups for next year. Starting, you sign up now, but September is when it starts. And then we do a lot of one-on-one mentorships. That's for people that say, I just want to work one-on-one. I don't want to just take this lane. I want you to deal with me in the area that I feel I have the greatest need. And so those are great. We only do a couple of those a year.
Yeah.
Because we do have to practice what we preach to. And
Yep.
I'll actually make a trip to the place, to the place, or I'll have them make a trip here, or both. So, TimWalden.com. Thanks for asking. Now, because I'm passionate about the only thing. If I couldn't shoot anymore, which is the number one thing I want to do, then I'd want to be able to share it with other artists.
Yeah, I believe that. And I know your heart's there. And we were lucky this year in Virginia. We got to have Tim. He taught an all day and then did, a seminar for us. And I bet there's a bunch of Virginia people on here now because they're like, you can't get enough of him. We just had, but I need more Tim. So that's a great way. TimWalden.com. You guys check that out for sure. Tim, do you have okay, let's see. Bernie Holiday. Not sure. Let's see. Tim, do you have a sort of mental script that you use for interviews, or do you just kind of wing it when you're talking to that potential client or talking to that client?
I think in bullet points.
Yeah,
Never a script. I always have bullet points. Like I have to be sure that I'm going to accomplish certain things. So I want to make sure that it goes back to what I said before, the heart buys, the mind justifies. So I don't want to spend a lot of time justifying our art, talking about what I call the mechanics. We use this kind of paper, we use that kind of paper. So we try to embellish. Matter of fact, this is one of the things we're doing during this time. We've, over the last week, made 17 bite-sized videos because I want to give people ways to get information. Those people that need it, that want that validation, I want to give them ways to get it without it being sitting in front of me talking about, OBAs and papers and talking about cameras and files. I don't want to talk about stuff like that. I want to talk about the people. So number one, I give them ways to validate. It's like when somebody buys a Jaguar, they don't buy it because of the engine. They buy it because of how it looks, how they look in it. But ultimately, when they go to write that check, the guy opens the hood and says, look, it's got, 12 cylinders. This is the finest. Okay, I'll take it. So, there's that.
You had me at hello.
Yeah. So I have bite-sized goals, and my goals are to make sure that in those design appointments, we call them, that we learn the story, that we have the emotional side of things happen. We also want to avoid problems. We have a document that we share with our clients, what we call the enemies of creativity. And I always tell customers, I says, did you know that creativity has enemies? And they're like, no. I said, let me tell you this. This is something you need to know. You bring me a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and say, hey, we don't want to be in it. We just want the kids together. There's a point we all start looking alike. I mean, our only goal is to get them looking the same way at the same time. Now, yes, maybe somebody will do it better than somebody else, but it doesn't lend itself to the level of artistry I want. So I figure customers are on the same side as I am. So to me, that's one of those enemies of creativity. So we talk about that. We have this document. I'll highlight it as I go. I'll say, that is an enemy of creativity. And I'll tell you why, because my goal is not intimacy. It's not artistry. It's getting the kids looking the same place at the same time. I want to stack the deck towards something that's has such visual impact, such story, such depth. Certain things have to happen for that to happen for us. And if anybody ever bucks it, somebody says, well, what if somebody doesn't want to? Yeah. Which honestly, if you've built your brand and you stay the course, you'll see less of that. But
I agree with that.
I always one of our close friends, she's an attorney, and she said, Tim, if you're going to ask questions, you better ask questions you know the answer to. And so one of the things I'll do, if somebody says, well, my husband didn't want to be in it, I don't want to be in it, I always say, you know what, can I ask you a question? Why did you choose Walden's? It's always the question, because I know the answer is not going to be you're cheap and easy to get to. You know, it's like,
Right.
they're always going to say, well, I've always wanted your work, my neighbors. My next question is, do you mind if I tell you what it's going to take for that to happen?
Yeah.
And so we're leading in those times. So we had those bullet points. We know how to steer through kind of some turbulent waters at times. If that happens, we attack the enemies of creativity. And the thing I would advise folks, I would advise you, is we've got to quit thinking of our customers as, and I know we don't think, I'm going to make it a little more blatant than it really is, but sometimes we think of our customers as our enemy. We got to convince them that, hey, you shouldn't be wearing that. You shouldn't be doing that. That's, you know, it's like, oh God, here they come with polka dots. Here they come with stripe, whatever it might be. We have to realize that our clients have the same goal we have. When they come to a brand that has formed their expectation, you have, and now you just got to fulfill it. It's a matter of education.
Yeah.
So I want to educate them. So we need to make sure we're singing from the same hymn book. When they walk in, what they see, the videos that we send, everything sings from the same hymn book. And then we begin to, I educate our clients like I educate photographers. One of those enemies of creativity with a 2-year-old might be a child being real comfortable with the place. Right. And that blows people away. It's like, comfort? Yeah, comfort can be a problem with a little child, because have you ever heard somebody say, you know, when a kid's kind of going ballistic, well, let me put them down and let them, you know, use some of that energy. Have you met the kid? Like, are you serious? We're going to fall over dead before that kid runs out of energy. So your most intimate images are going to come immediately. When a child is not afraid, you don't want a child afraid, but you want them a little unsure. So I want you to carry that 2-year-old in. We're going to wear the solid dark clothing, so I don't have to worry about getting the tie straight and the jacket looking right. And then I want you to walk into that camera room ready to go, because that child's going to cling to you for about 10 minutes. And once that child gets used to that room and that environment, they're down. So we're stacking the deck in our favor, because when we do that, we're stacking it in the favor of our clients. We're clearly defining our goals. We're learning their stories. I could go on and on, obviously.
I love it. I wish you could. Let's try back at another question. And you're exactly right. You know, it depends on your style, but we're very much the same way. Those first 15 minutes are when you're getting those expressions that just, because they're just a little scared. And that sounds mean, but it's good. Yeah, unshare it.
That's good. But
yeah, that's a good thing. All right, let's see. Patricia Van Berg said, Tim, so good to see you. What are your thoughts if you do, example, portraits and dance? Could that be in one brand, or would you do 2 different ones? So I think she's asking about portraiture and maybe like dance schools. Can you put that under one roof, one brand?
I think you can do anything you set your mind to. It's just a matter of getting a working plan, and the question becomes, it really is where you're starting. If you're starting at a place where you've got this, like we did, we had a brand, we were doing all this photography, a little bit of everything for everybody, and we had lots of customers, but we wanted to leverage our way out of it. So we created a relationship style in the middle of that. We gave it the personality, purpose, and the honor, and then we carved away at the other things, because we'd have been totally out of business if I had just said I'm not doing anything else. So a lot of it has to do, Patricia, with your motive. If your motive is to grow it, I would think you would want to segregate it from your high-end brand, and you have to find really clear paths to do that, ways to do that where you keep those very separate. I don't think there's any way you couldn't do it. I just think you have to be very purposed in it. And one of the things that I like to share with people is I'll say, you need to make a plan. Go ahead and make a plan for how you're going to do that. And then the question that always comes up is like, well, how do I know what to do? And I'll say, you know what? You don't. Here's what I want to give you permission to do. Make a bad plan. That's better than no plan.
Wow. Yeah.
And make it a good one as you work it.
Right.
Because I'm going to give you permission not to know the answer to some of that. Just make a plan, begin to walk the plan in this. And then as those obstacles come, begin to carve away and morph it into the perfect plan. We never start with the perfect plan. You should have seen what relationship portraits look like the first 2 years. I wish I could go back and find some of that crap. It's just, but we had the heart of it. So I would say, yes, you can do it. Make a plan to do it. Be purposed in it, and segregate it, keep it clean, and then begin to morph it, change it as you go.
I love that. And I think you're exactly right. But I love that permission to make it bad, you just make a plan, bad plan, whatever it is,
That's right.
whatever it is. Well, as usual, my friend, you are absolutely amazing. I think Ronan will pop back in and help me out. I tried to get all the questions. Is the wall behind you gray? I think it is, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a really warm, deep gray.
Yeah, like like brownish gray. Like I got that warm tone to it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I'm sure Bev picked it out. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So much love being sent your way, Tim, just so you know, everybody. So grateful and loving and thanking you so much. And I know that I adore you. You know that.
Well, that's right back at you, Ronan, you and what you guys are doing. This industry is just the best. And we're not the normal industry. I've lectured at other industries, and you go there, you get up and lecture, and everybody scatters like ants to get away from each other.
Yeah,
photographers are not like that, and please never change. That's what makes us so special. Is how much we care about what we do and the people that do it with us.
I love that.
Oh my gosh, my head is exploding.
I know.
Oh, and my heart is exploding and my soul is exploding. It's just been amazing, but there's been so much. I'm not even going to be able to summarize it all. Tim, I'd stay here all night just listening to you and writing. You know, I really would. Amazing. But what I loved was Tim talked about relationships with purpose. Make sure the relationships you form, that they're with purpose. Connections. Figure out, how do you engage your client's mind? How do you get there? You have to be willing to be vulnerable with your clients, you know, because that will create that emotion that's required. Wisdom is knowing what not to do as much as what you do. Like, I love that. Is a part of your brand DNA. Another,
isn't that awesome?
Amazing line. And then I loved where the mass is going and run the other direction. You know, as a business, we try and do that all the time.
Yeah.
But I never heard it put so well. Absolutely amazing. And then the final one, which I thought was absolutely amazing. So the story I'm going to create for you, if it was the bold print of the chapter, what would it say?
And then, I know.
What do you say?
He said it all. He said it all. I heard a word today, guys, and I thought it was so perfect timing that I was going to be on the call with both of you. And it's a made-up word, but it's purposity. It's purpose and generosity, which we need so much more of now, more than ever. But I think this industry, I think that sums us all up as creative artists, photographers, small business owners, purposity. So I will share that word with you, purpose with generosity. And I think you guys both are the epitome of that. So
right back at you. I love it.
Oh no, y'all are the best.
Good word of the day. Good word of the season.
Yes, good word of the season. And yes, you may use that word. And I don't know, Tim, do you have any books that you've written? I've seen that asked twice now.
Yeah, many years ago I did a relationship book. I think it might be on Amazon. I'm not sure. We don't have it, but yeah, relationship portraits.
Yeah. Want more Tim Walden? Go to timwalden.com. You guys, I know he'll get back to you. His mentorships, those programs, you should definitely check it out, because he's one of the best. And I know that they sell out very quickly. So timwalden.com. If you want more Tim, that's what you should do. And then Ronan, we'll be here next week or every day.
Absolutely. We're here every day doing something. But
yes.
I just want to thank you guys again so much. I want to thank our audience. If you want to see a replay of this, it'll be in both the Photography Think Tank group and it'll be in 3XM Insiders. So, because I know I'm going to have to watch this over and over and over again. I know when I watch it 12 times, I'll still be learning. Absolutely amazing. Love you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
you. You're doing, Mary, Ronan. You guys, thanks for what you're doing for the industry.
You're so welcome. Hugs to Bev.
Yep.
Absolutely.
God bless.
Bye, y'all.
Stay good. Good night, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, everybody, wherever you're based. Bye for now.